It was a perfect afternoon, the kind of day that made you feel like everything was right with the world. The sun was shining, laughter echoed across the park, and the gentle rustling of leaves painted a peaceful picture. But not everything was as it seemed. In the middle of this serenity, a small group of children had gathered, their voices a mix of giggles and shouts. At first glance, it seemed harmless, a group of kids playing as kids do. Yet, as their actions became clearer, so did the darker side of their game. They surrounded a small, trembling puppy, its tiny frame pressed against the grass as it tried to escape. One child nudged it with their foot, sending the puppy stumbling a few inches forward, only for another to push it back with a stick. The puppy let out a faint, heart-wrenching yelp, but the children only laughed louder. They didn't see a small life full of fear and vulnerability. To them, it was just a game, an innocent moment of fun that had already crossed the line into cruelty. And then, in the midst of this unsettling scene, something terrible happened. The puppy's cries grew louder, but the children didn't stop. They moved in closer, their laughter masking the whimpers of the terrified animal. Some onlookers noticed from a distance, their gazes lingering briefly before turning away. A man walking his dog paused, watching the scene unfold, but hesitated, unsure of whether to step in. A woman sitting on a nearby bench glanced over, her expression a mixture of concern and uncertainty. People seemed frozen in their places, caught in the discomfort of witnessing something wrong yet feeling powerless or unwilling to act. One of the children, emboldened by the laughter of the others, stepped forward. He raised his leg as if to deliver another kick. The puppy flinched, curling into a tight ball, its tiny body shaking uncontrollably. It was a moment that stretched on forever, the tension in the air palpable. The park, once filled with peaceful sounds, now seemed eerily quiet, save for the nervous murmurs of a few passers-by who had stopped to watch. The collective unease was growing, but no one moved. The children, caught up in their game, remained oblivious to the gravity of their actions. And then, just as the boy's foot began to move, there was a sudden, sharp bark. It cut through the air like a warning, startling everyone. Heads turned toward the source of the sound, and the children froze. For the first time, the laughter stopped, replaced by silence and a growing sense of unease. Something was about to change, and no one could look away. The sharp bark echoed across the park, breaking the tension like a crack of thunder. All eyes turned to the source of the sound. Standing a few feet away was a large dog, its fur bristling and its stance rigid. Its deep growl rumbled like distant thunder, a clear warning to the children who had cornered the puppy. The kids exchanged nervous glances, their bravado melting into fear. For the first time, they realized they weren't in control anymore. The large dog's eyes locked onto the trembling puppy, its protective instincts unmistakable. Slowly, it began to approach, each step deliberate and firm. The children backed away instinctively, their earlier laughter replaced by uneasy silence. One of the boys dropped the stick he'd been holding, and another muttered, "Let's go," his voice trembling. But the large dog wasn't focused on them. It was entirely fixated on the small, frightened figure on the ground. As it reached the puppy, the larger dog nuzzled it gently, checking for injuries. The puppy, sensing safety for the first time, let out a soft whimper and leaned into the larger dog's side. The sight was enough to make even the onlookers, who had hesitated earlier, feel a wave of emotion. It was as if the larger dog had stepped in to do what no one else had been brave enough to do: protect the innocent and stand up to cruelty. The children, now thoroughly unsettled, began to scatter. Some ran without a word, while others lingered for a moment, staring at the powerful and unexpected bond before them. The large dog didn't chase them. It simply stood tall, its presence a silent reprimand to those who had caused harm. Before the tension could settle, a voice called out, cutting through the scene. "Max, there you are!" A woman came running from across the park, her face a mixture of relief and urgency. The large dog turned its head toward her, but didn't move. staying protectively by the puppy's side. As she approached, her eyes widened when she saw the trembling puppy and the scattering children. "Oh no," she said softly, kneeling down to check on the small dog. She looked up at the bystanders who had gathered, her voice calm but firm. "Is this what was happening?" Her question hung in the air, heavy with disappointment. A few people nodded, and one brave soul stepped forward to explain. The woman shook her head, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. "This is why we need to teach kindness," she said, gently lifting the puppy into her arms. Max, the larger dog, stood close to her, his protective stance unwavering. She stroked his head and smiled faintly. "Good boy," she whispered, her gratitude evident. Turning to the few children who remained, she addressed them directly. "This little one is scared and hurt because of what you did. Do you see how wrong that was?" The kids shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet her gaze. One of them muttered an apology, and she nodded. "It's not enough to say sorry. You need to understand that animals feel pain, fear, and love, just like we do. We have to protect them, not hurt them." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, the children seemed to truly understand the gravity of their actions. The woman stood, holding the puppy close, as Max walked faithfully by her side. Together, they began to leave the park, leaving the children and onlookers in thoughtful silence. Later that evening, the woman returned home with the two dogs by her side. The small puppy, now safe in a warm blanket, rested on her lap while Max lay protectively at her feet. She gently examined the puppy for injuries, her movements careful and kind. "You're safe now," she whispered softly, her voice filled with reassurance. The puppy looked up at her with wide, grateful eyes, its tiny tail wagging for the first time since the ordeal. As she cared for the puppy, her thoughts lingered on the events of the day. She knew it wasn't just about what the children had done, it was about what they hadn't been taught. The importance of empathy, of recognizing the value of every life, was a lesson that couldn't be ignored. The next morning, the woman posted a message in the local community group, recounting what had happened and urging parents to teach their children the importance of kindness toward animals. Her words struck a chord with many, and soon people began sharing stories of their own experiences with animals, both heartwarming and heartbreaking. The incident became a catalyst for change in the neighborhood, sparking conversations about compassion and responsibility. Meanwhile, the puppy began to thrive under her care. It grew stronger, more confident, and happier with each passing day. Max, ever the guardian, never left its side, the bond between them growing deeper. For the woman, the sight of the two dogs playing together in her yard was a reminder that even in moments of cruelty, love and kindness could prevail. The story didn't just end with the puppy's rescue. It became a symbol of something bigger, a reminder that every small act of kindness matters, and that standing up for those who cannot defend themselves can inspire others to do the same. A few weeks later, the puppy was no longer the frightened, trembling little dog it had been that day in the park. Its coat was shiny, its eyes sparkled with life, and its tail wagged constantly. It ran joyfully around the yard, chasing Max, who playfully barked and nudged it along. The transformation was remarkable, a testament to what love and care could do. The woman stood nearby, watching them with a smile. In her hand was a camera, and she recorded the playful scene. Turning the camera toward herself, she spoke directly, her voice warm and heartfelt. "This is what happens when we choose kindness. This little one came from a moment of fear and cruelty, but look at it now, safe, loved, and happy." She paused, her tone becoming more serious. "But this isn't just about one puppy. Every day animals face situations like this, and too often, they don't have someone like Max or a second chance. It's up to us to be their voice, to stand up when we see something wrong, and to teach others, especially the next generation, that compassion matters." She turned the camera back to the dogs, who were now curled up together under the shade of a tree. their bond unbreakable. If you've ever seen an animal in need, remember this: you can make a difference. Speak up, step in, and show that love always wins. The video ended with a final shot of the puppy looking directly into the camera, its eyes bright and full of trust. The screen faded to black, with a simple message appearing in bold white letters: "Be the voice for the voiceless." Below it, the woman added her call to action: like, share, and subscribe to spread this message. Together, we can create a kinder world.